Okay, so today I'm going to be tying a Peanut Envy, Kelly Gallup's Peanut Envy in olive. As you can probably see by all these dungeons that are laying on my desk, I've been on a little bit of a Kelly Galloup kick lately. And rewatching a lot of his videos. And my box was low on olive Peanut Envies, which is not good. Don't like that. So that's how we got here. A Peanut Envy is a fly I always like to have some of, especially in olive, in my box. The hook here, this is a size 4. I'm going to do a size 2 for the front. Any 3X long streamer hook is fine. You want something with a straight eye, especially for the back. A down eye is going to make that articulation kind of wonky. For the tail, you can pick out, I've already got my piece of marabou picked out here, my first one, but you're going to want to get a good piece of marabou, and you want about a hook length and a quarter for that tail. Give it a couple pin traps. And then just work your way up to the front, locking that down. Cut that off, leaving yourself some room with the eye. Don't crowd the eye up too bad. You're gonna have trouble getting all the rest of your stuff on there. And a little bit of flash. So Kelly Galloup usually likes to layer this flash in his tails, so that's what I do on his flies, which means one piece of marabou, and then some flash, and then another piece of marabou. That's how he builds his tails. If you want to become a better tyer, watch Kelly Galloup tie anything. Doesn't matter if you fish streamers, if you don't fish streamers. He ties a lot of dry flies and nymphs too, but he's a very intentional tyer, and he'll teach you to be an intentional tyer. Everything he does has a purpose, and that's a good way to make yourself a much better tyer. Just making sure that everything you do has a purpose. Every wrap, every material you put on, just being intentional about things. And there's a lot of gold in his videos. I couldn't tell you how many times I watched him tie a dungeon. More times than I can count, because you always pick up little tidbits, little bits of knowledge from him. So I'm just getting another piece of marabou with the, I want to get the section where all the tips are the same length, and I'm going to cut out this bottom bit. So instead of pulling all this off like a lot of guys do, I cut this right here. All this stuff I would have pulled off, I set it aside, and I make marabou brushes out of that. You don't have to do that, but I like doing it just because it's fun to me. So match up this tail, same length as that other piece of marabou. Couple pin traps, and work your way back forward. And get that tightened down a little bit. And for the 2 people who might have noticed, this is a new vise. I have been tying, up until now, I was tying on a Wolf Industries Atlas rotary vise. Got rid of that. And now I'm tying on a Renzetti Presentation 2300. I do really like this vise. I will be doing an actual review on it at some point, but the biggest thing I like about it is that it holds hooks way better, way better than that Wolf does. So get your wire in here for Couter Rib, and then where's my dubbing loop tool? Oh, I'll just use this one until I find it. Oh, make a dubbing loop. Go around that a couple times, back forward. Half hitch to lock that in. Get my bobbin cradle around here. And I'm gonna make the body out of iStub olive brown. Get some good wax on here. And this is just, I think the brand of this tool is Terra. It's just a dubbing loop spinner. The Stonfo makes a really good one too. It actually spins stuff up a lot quicker and easier than this Terra does. But the thing I like about this is that it has different attachments. So instead of having these thin little wires in here, I can put that hefty hook. That's what I use for doing bucktail dubbing loops and doing deer hair heads in a dubbing loop, because I just have to put a little more pressure on those than these thin little wires can handle. Just gonna build your dubbing into a little, get a taper to it, make a nice little triangle. Kind of get it laid out in your hand first. All right, and then we're gonna loosen up our tension on this dubbing loop, and those wires will open it right up. Slide that in there. And adjust it. Get it straightened back out. And then spin it up real good. Brush that out just a little bit. Make it a little bit buggier. And then use that rotary function to run it all the way forward, trying not to nick your thread on your hook like I just did. And back to Kelly Galloup being an intentional tire. If you watch him every single time he does a dubbing loop, he winds up with just the perfect amount, ends in the perfect spot. Every fly he ties, he looks like he has tied a million of them, which I think is a very admirable quality. He's very consistent in his tying, very intentional, and I'll also tell you that the way to become a faster tire, I'm just using some Whiting American soft hackle. It's a hen saddle for this. It's grizzly dyed olive. You can use neck hackle or schloppen, but a lot of schloppen is kind of hard to, in this size it's kind of hard because a lot of schloppen is just a little too big. The fibers are too long, but I do like the webby look of this hen saddle. I like that it's a little bit webbier than the neck hackle. So you're gonna butt this up against your thread, do one wrap in front of that, one wrap behind it, two wraps in front, pull tight, half hitch. I left that a little long. Trim that stem a little bit. And then we're gonna do one full turn right there in the front and then start running that feather back. Then we're going to capture that with our wire. This is one thing that I do not do the way that Kelly does it. He runs his wire through really fast and insists that the faster you go, the less stuff you trap. I don't know about that. I always trap more stuff the faster I go, especially with webby feathers like this. I don't know what his secret is, but when I go fast, I trap everything. So I do the whole slow turn, wiggle through method. Gonna capture that. Helicopter it off. Trim that stem just a little bit shorter. I left it pretty long there. There we go. Now, trim the tip of that feather out. Rubber legs. 2 on the back hook. Olive, barred. Lay those on top, do 1 wrap going over them this way, 1 wrap going over them that way, so you've got an X on top. Then 2 wraps in front, then get your tension. And that's how to get them to sit right on top for you. They're not gonna pull off to one side or the other. Get a very clean tie-in like that. I'm having to manipulate them a little bit because I didn't really leave myself quite enough room on this eye with that hackle. And I'm going to trim these legs. Just one of those wound up way long. Like that. Make sure I don't want them extending much past the tail. And the last step for the tail is another piece of marabou for the wing. Again, you want to find a nice, fairly thick piece with a fluffy tip. Get it where it's all straight. I'm going to cut out this bottom section, set that aside. A lot of times these feathers, you'll see that they're kind of clumped up from the dye. A lot of people will throw those out, but you can actually brush that out of it. If you take a nice fine-tooth comb and just comb through those, it'll get to looking like a pretty prime feather. So if you see them clumped up like that, don't throw them out. And also, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to go through the trouble of combing them out, you swim them a couple times and it washes out. You'll never know. But I'm a little too particular to put them on my fly looking like that. For better or worse, I'm a perfectionist. We're gonna whip finish that. You want this wing extending where it's just not covering all this tail, maybe covering about 1/3 of your tail. And then you're gonna do the same thing with the front wing. That way when you're done, it's just like a continuous olive piece of marabou over the top. You want it to look like one piece, and it really helps the fly, you know, not look like two segments. Whip finish. And I'm gonna throw a little bit of UV resin on here. Maybe, if it'll come out. That one's not wanting to cooperate. Let's grab, that'll work. If this one cooperates with me. Doesn't look like it. Oh, it's just not a good day for UV resins. One more try. Zap a gap. A little bit of zap on it. Yeah, there we go. That's coming. Boom. Careful not to get that drawn up into your marabou. All right. And let's take the scrap piece of this little soft hackle feather and get that excess glue off. Now, we take some Senyo's articulation wire, large size. Clip off a good portion of that. And onto the front hook. If I can find where I set them. There they are. Size 2 for the front hook. And a large tungsten cone head. Okay, now I'm going to take some 025 lead wire, throw a few wraps on there, and break that off. And then shove that right up against that cone head, and that's going to hold it in place and keep it from sliding around on us while we're tying. Now we're going to lay down thread base, get that good and pushed up in there, run some thread through it. Now I like to have a good thread base down on the shank before I try to put on my articulation wire. I think it just helps it hold a little bit better. I'm going to butt this articulation wire up against my lead wraps, and I'm running it down along my side, kind of along the bottom of the shank, because when I come back forward with the other end of it, I'm going to go right above that. So this one's running down here, next one's going to run back right on top of it. Go all the way back to the bend. Usually use one bead here. If you're using the large Hareline 3D beads, that is. If you're using smaller beads, you're going to want to use 2, maybe even 3, depending on how small your beads are. Run your wire through there, through your hook, back through that bead. And then pull it to where you have about another, that bead is touching your front hook, and then you've got about another bead's worth of opening in that wire. You don't want that wire pulled real snug. Put a couple pin traps on here. And then you want to make sure that this wire is where you want it. It's not twisted side to side. If your loop is rolled that way, take this piece of wire and roll it back the other way. Or you'll wind up with a back hook that's not going to ride true. Just make sure it's fairly straight and then start tightening things down. Run it all the way back up to the front. I'm going to cut it off right about at the back of that lead. And a lot of guys will double those wires over, pull them back, and tie them in again. If you want to, more power to you. I've never had one pull out just wrapping like this. So I'm not too concerned about it. Put down a little bit of glue just to help it bind. Okay. Get another scrap piece of marabou or something. Get all that extra glue off. Now, a little bit more flash. I'm using holographic olive flashabou here. I'm going to take 2 strands. Double them over and cut them in half. Wet them down so they stick together. Tie in a little bit easier. Don't glue your fingers together. Get a few wraps over them. Pull it back. And I like to run them on separate sides here. So I got a few on one side, a few on the other. And then you're going to trim them just far enough back that they're kind of going into that back hook. Further than the connection, going back into that marabou wing just a little bit. And now, wire again. I have a personality flaw. I don't know. That's not the right word, but I have a bad habit. That's probably the best thing for it. A bad habit with wire where I will cut it off of my back hook, or cut it off of a fly if I'm production tying a bunch of nymphs or something. I do the same thing with tinsel too, or any kind of rib really. But I cut it off, and then something in my brain is just like, never gonna need that again, and off into the abyss it goes. And then to get to the next fly and cut a whole new piece of wire. All right, another dubbing loop. This is a really simple fly. I mean, it's pretty much the same in the front as it was in the back, but we're going to leave ourselves room. I'm going to stop right about the back of these letter wraps to leave myself room for the hackle, rubber legs, marabou wing, all that good stuff. If you know how to tie a dungeon, this is a dungeon with a cone head instead of a deer hair head. That's basically all it is. I mean, not the same action. That doesn't have the same wiggle because it doesn't have that deer hair head creating that turbulence. But as far as tying it goes, very, very similar. And if you don't know how to tie a dungeon, go watch Kelly's video. Go watch Kelly's video if you do know how to tie a dungeon, because if the only thing you got out of that video is you know the steps to tie that fly, you know, watch it some more. Watch it again and again and again, and that goes with a lot of the stuff he posts. There's little bits of wisdom tucked in there, little tricks, little things to make you a better tire. Take your time here and get this dubbing how you like it, because it's much easier to fix it right now before you spin everything up. Well, not now, but before you spin it up. And then right here, just have it the way you want it. Brush it out a little bit. And one thing I do love this vise. Let me start by saying that. One thing I'm not thrilled about so far is this material clip. The placement of it is just, this is as far forward as it can slide. And it's just not that far back. It doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's not very useful for me back there. Now, I don't know what I wanted them to do about it, because it can't slide forward anymore. There's a joint there, but that's my 2 cents. Is I've had to put this rubber band in here to grab those hooks, because I can't get, unless I'm tying something pretty big, I can't get my hook all the way back into that material clip. It's just not close enough. And we're gonna run a little bit shy here, which is, you know, I've not tied a million of these like Kelly Galloup has. And this is where it shows, right here. So I'm gonna just tie off that dubbing loop. Snip that short, or off that short. And throw a little bit of dubbing on right here. And fix that right up. And that's probably gonna be too much, honestly. It's definitely gonna be too much. No, that worked out. Okay. Take another hackle. And this hackle is on the smaller side of what you would want to use. I definitely wouldn't want to use smaller hackle than this, but I've got a few of these Whiting Red Label hen saddles. And this one's particularly small. Most of them are about the right size for this. But you want to get up here with any hackle you're wrapping. I'm kind of just repeating everything that's in Kelly's video, but any hackle you're wrapping, you want to get up to where when you bend it, it doesn't stay bent. It's like up here, it's not staying bent. So I'm going to go all the way up into the air. I'm going to cut this. This is not, I love Whiting Hackle. This one's not my favorite product I've ever had from them. This particular, I love my other ones, but this one has thick stems. I don't know what's going on with that. One wrap in front, one wrap behind, 2 wraps in front, cinch it down, half hitch. One full turn here, then set your angle and run it back. Ooh. But don't let go of that feather. Capture it with that wire. Now, I find it much easier to not trap a bunch of fibers with webby stuff like this if you brush it out and get all those fibers separated, because when you first lay them down, they're curled over a lot, they're stuck to each other, and that's why you wind up trapping a whole bunch of them. So if you brush them out like that, you'll trap less. And then wiggle this wire through. Be cutting it close with this wire. I did not grab enough from the get-go. There we go. We're there. Tie that off and helicopter that loose. There we go. Now, again, rubber legs, 3 this time. And you can step it up. I've put, I tie some of these for bass in the summer, and I've put a lot of legs on some of these. Which this is, you know, if you're not aware, this is Kelly Galloup's version of Russ Madden's Circus peanut, which has quite a few legs on it. But this is a fantastic trout fly, smallmouth. So again, one wrap over, going back. This isn't working. Then come behind these legs, one wrap going the other way. Little to no tension so far. 2 wraps in front. I'm actually going to pull these through before I get some tension because I didn't get them quite even. That's pretty even. Okay, now we're going to pull down with some tension. Get those locked in. Trim them all off fairly even here. And the last bit is one more marabou wing. This one, especially with it being at the front of the fly, you really want it to look good. So either pick one good, really full feather, or if you don't have a really nice feather, do 2, double it up. It's like this right here. That's where you can see that feather is clumped up a little bit from the dye. So I take a comb, run that through there a few times. It'll kind of unclump it. And after you get that wet and dry it, I mean, even now, you can't tell near as much as you could before I ran that comb through. But once you get that wet, you'll never tell. You'll never be able to see where it's clumped up. The only exception to that is some of them get clumped up so bad that you can see in the coloration of it. You can see when you get it unclumped, there's a little white spot where the dye didn't really get into the fibers of that feather. Goodness. Feather nice and moist. They're much easier to work with when they're wetted down like that. Probably best to not do it in your mouth, just from all these dyes, but what you gonna do? And you want this wing to lay back about a quarter of the way into the wing that's on the front of your back hook. So again, just one continuous piece going back, and I'm gonna set that in place. Couple loose wraps and cinch it down. Cut that off. I'm also going to cut off back here where I forgot to trim out the tip of that feather. And just to clean up this head a little bit, I got a little gap in between, you know, where I'm at right now and my cone head. I'm just gonna fill that up with a little bit of dubbing. This same olive brown eye stub. Whip finish. If you don't know how to half hitch or whip finish by hand, it's very handy, especially a half hitch, because you can just throw one in there to go back to your rotary. But I've got videos on both of those, so go check those out. And that is Kelly Galloup's Peanut Envy. This is a great trout fly or bass fly. This is one of my go-tos for both of those. You will never catch me out fishing streamers without an olive Peanut Envy in my box, because this is one of my top producers in for both of those species. So yeah, go watch Kelly's video too, and watch everything he ties. Watch him tie this, watch him tie a dungeon, watch it over and over and over again, because you will pick up lots of little tips, even, you know, stuff that is useful far beyond tying this particular fly. But hope that helped you out.